Ayo. Good morning. Good morning. Morning, Ace. Welcome. First in. Keen. He's keen. How you doing? All right? Pretty good. Awesome. Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. Surviving. All right. Got my hopefully final tomorrow. What do you mean? Final exam? Nice. What's the exam? What's the subject? Making a little comic book, 30 pages. Oh, cool. Very nice. Well, I wish you good luck for tomorrow. Cool. So, today, I've had like a little idea brewing for the last few days. Obviously really enjoyed doing the Misty Forest study. And yeah, it was a nice kind of couple of days working on that. So what I want to do today is now I want to basically invent a landscape image with some kind of narrative to it. And I have this idea of sort of like a shipwreck cove, like a sort of a, you know, overcast, sort of dark and dreary beach that has shipwrecks on it, and then off in the distance in the mist some kind of larger rock formation that has a sort of ship and its sails kind of off in the distance. So it's got a very sort of cinematic and like video gamey feel about it overall. And I've gathered some reference already. I have an idea of the composition. I actually like sketched it down very briefly. If you can see that. Very, very briefly in my sketchbook, just kind of what I'm looking for. So sort of like skeletal shipwreck sort of in the front that's going to sort of lead us into the image. And then in the background there's going to be sort of a big shipwreck that's almost going to look a little bit almost like a sort of a rib cage, and I want to have kind of some of the sails that are still kind of attached to it with all the rigging sort of blowing in the wind, so it's got like a real sort of spooky castle kind of feel about it in the back. But it's going to be very overcast and like quite sort of dark and moody. Rock pools, lots of seaweed, lots of like shipwreck stuff, maybe even some like, I don't know, like some kind of shambling beach zombies or something. I don't know, we'll get to that later. But yeah, that's the kind of, there will be camels. Yeah, lots of camels. So that's the idea. So I'm going to build that up today. I'm going to start building the composition. I'm going to sort of build that up from scratch today. And I don't know that we'll get to like rendering it today, but should actually have like most of the main shapes laid out and the composition as a whole. But yeah, that's kind of the plan today. Morning, Jewel. I see you there. Hello. And morning, Peter. How's it going? Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, mate. Thanks for asking. I hope you are also well. Thanks for tuning in. So yeah, we're going to build that up today. So I'll show you the kind of references that I've gathered so far. Let's switch over to Photoshop. Yeah, I'll show you the references that I've gathered so far for this. And then, yeah, I'll kind of get into building that illustration up. And we can just talk about that process. But essentially, as I've been saying previously, I'm trying to sort of marry up my processes, where my process for sort of doing characters and my process for doing environments, I kind of want to make those two things very similar, if not the same. And it's been working out pretty well so far. So I'm just going to keep practicing this, and obviously over time we'll get a lot better at it. But yeah, it's something I really want to kind of get into at the moment, is doing the environment work a bit more, just because I enjoy it, and I don't get to do a lot of it. Peter, yes, all good here in Berlin. I'm in home office today, so I can watch you today for a bit. Looking forward to it. Hey, very sweet. Very nice. Well, enjoy it. So, yeah, we'll go through it. I've got some references here. Some are like direct references for, you know, parts of the image that I intend to have in here. But others are just more for sort of either the palette or the mood. So I got this one here. This is very much for the sort of the palette, the color palette. This is by John Sweeney. I don't know if he's still at Naughty Dog, but he used to work at Naughty Dog. This was someone that I used to follow his work and his process when I was learning to do environment concept art when I was a junior. John Sweeney was someone that had put out some tutorials and like videos on how he put together images like this, and they were really, really good, very useful, and it's stuff that I followed myself because I didn't have any idea how to do this kind of stuff, and it was part of my first job was to do like photo bash environments. So like off the back of something like this was one of the first pieces that I ever worked on as a junior, and I basically followed the processes that he used, not on this particular image, but on some older ones that he did, and it was really very helpful to do that. So yeah, that was anyway, so I really like his work. He's very good at this kind of like moody, very like overcast and tight value range kind of stuff. So that's in here for the color palette. This is I'll get to this in a sec actually. Again, this is another one. I do like the sort of the introduction of the greens in here, and then I think that's going to be helpful for the beach scene. It's like ever so slight hue shifts into like brown and green, and obviously we got the sort of bluey greys and stuff. Even though it appears like very, very overcast, it's actually, there's quite a lot of subtle hue variation in there, which I think kind of really helps it. So that's cool. And again, this is another one of his. I was contemplating having a bright sky on my one. I will see how that looks as we start to build it, but this is here as, again, that kind of reference, but just good subtle hue variations. There's like some sort of pinks going on in here. There's some nice browns and blues and so on. Bit of oranges back here. Very nice color palette overall, but I do like the sort of cinematic kind of flatness to it. You know, it feels very telephoto, very cinematic. This is by Eitan Zana. Obviously, I want to have sort of like rocks and sand and sort of, you know, cloud and wind and all this kind of stuff. So this is just a nice reference for that. For this, Eitan Zana, again, possibly former Naughty Dog employee, or maybe he's still there. Really, really good environment artist. Some really good tutorials as well for composition and so on. Worth checking out if that's your thing. And again, this is another one by Eitan Zana. I just really like the color palette. The browns are very nice. I think there's room for us to have like some browns in the rocks and stuff that I'm gonna have. But yeah, again, just the weather looks really cool. Just I just like the way that he does these. How do you spell his name? Eitan Zana. Yeah, exactly as you spelt it there, Ace. Yeah, super cool. Yeah, all those three dudes, John Sweeney, Eitan Zana, and I don't have one of his images, but a guy called Nick Gindral, all from Naughty Dog. Really, really sick environment artists, like really, really cool. This is obviously a photo of like rock pools. Again, it's just here for some shape inspiration and so forth. Like I can see the foreground of the current image that I'm going to do is somewhat similar. And this is, again, if I ignore the brightness of the sky, I do kind of like the sort of the color range in this. And this is also to remind me that if the pools are still, that they should reflect the sky in this way. So that's also there. Have you seen the Orkin game announcement from Six More Vodka? No, I haven't seen they've announced it. I remember seeing some sketches and stuff years ago, but is it going to be another sort of tabletop RPG kind of thing? Yeah, and then my final reference here, and I'll bring up some more of this because it's some more, but this is from Sketchfab. I often search on Sketchfab for props and stuff because it can be handy. It's almost like you don't need a 3D program to look at ref, right? You just search stuff up on Sketchfab and then you can, look at it from any angle. And I find this very helpful for references. It saves even building a 3D model and so on. I don't use them directly, like sometimes I'll download the free ones and use them, but I mostly just take screenshots from the models like this as a reference. And it's just really helpful. And I really like this sort of skeletal boat and this curve that it has from this angle. And I feel like this could be a nice like lead into the image. So I'm going to use this as reference, but I want to build up a bit more of the sort of skeletal kind of nature of the boat, and maybe sort of make it feel a bit more like a much larger boat relative to the ground and so on. But yeah, really, really cool reference here. So I took a screenshot of that to help. But there's other like shipwrecks on here which could be useful. I think this one's kind of cool. So we may use this. This one's kind of cool because it already has that sort of skeletal thing that I'm after in the boat. So it has some nice negative spaces, but it doesn't have the curve that the other one has. So like something between this and the other one is probably like the sort of shape that I'll be going for. I did think of like doing something where like the image, is almost framed from the inside of the boat like this. Imagine like a bit more of this is disappeared and we have something like that as a way of framing the image. But I felt like it sort of cut out a little bit too much of the environment. Like I wanted a bit more sort of rocks and beach and stuff like that. So while this is very cool, it maybe kind of detracts a little bit from the rest of the landscape, which is what I wanted to show. But still great ref, like really sick. Nice coloring in this as well. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. Let's just take a quick screeny of that, because that's going to be helpful. At work, slacking, watching Heath. Oh, Mel, what's up? It's been a hot minute. Hope you are doing well. Yeah, welcome to the stream. Let's see, Ace. It looks pretty cool. No, a double A PC game like the Orkan Universe. Looking forward to. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll check that out after stream. Carry on. I'm well busy with work. Okay, busy but slacking. I like it. I know the feel. Yo, Castonia, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Yeah, so okay, that's essentially my thoughts, right, on creating the image. So previously we were working from, ref, and sort of doing kind of semi-study, semi-makeup environment with the Misty Forest and the previous ones that I'd done. But this one we're going to go much more on the sort of makeup side of things and just using the photos as reference. Yeah, and I'm going to make a sort of like Shipwreck Cove that's going to have some kind of narrative element to it, only slightly, in as much as, there's been shipwrecks and there's kind of a place to go, so it's going to feel like a little bit video gamey. I almost want it to feel like as if it was like Silent Hill, but it's set at the beach. That's the idea. So, and yeah, I'm going to use these things from Sketchfab as kind of shape references. So I'm just cutting the background out from both of these. I like the sort of curvature of this one, and I do like the sort of skeletal nature of this one. But I want to make them feel a lot larger, as in like this one feels like a person is maybe sort of this big. Odorous stench. Thanks for the follow. Yeah, maybe a person is about this big or a little bit smaller, and I want the boat to feel a bit bigger than that, like a small sort of pirate style frigate of some manner. So anyway, we got those as shape references, and then yeah, got all of these for the kind of mood and color palette kind of thing. And I have the sketch in my sketchbook of the rough composition. I'll just show it again quickly for people that might have missed it at the beginning. Hey, good morning, Oracle. Welcome. You finished Silent Hill 2. Well done. Finally not scared anymore. So yeah, not a particularly like hang on, fantastic sketch here, but this was my rough idea when I was thinking about it on the sofa yesterday. So with that in mind, I'll start building a composition out. Odorous stench sounds like a crossword clue that I'll never be able to get. Yeah, fair enough. Alright. So, sorry. Okay, getting distracted. Hi everyone, hope everyone is doing well. Nice art, Heath Alex. Thank you very much, Odorous Stench. I appreciate that, and thanks for tuning in, my guy. Checking out the links. Nice. Nice. I wasn't scared the last half. They gave me so much ammo. They were trapped with me. Okay, fair enough. I like that. Alright. So, my first, like, port of call, no pun intended, here, would be to essentially, like, set up the perspective for the scene, which is going to be important, and I will show you a little program that I use for that. This, by the way, is 21:9, the ratio for this. This is like a very cinematic, ultra widescreen format. I really like it for landscapes. I know. Hang on, I'll bring this up. Just a sec. D-Wave 9000. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in, darling. So this isn't quite 21:9, but it's basically 21:9. And yeah, it's quite a nice format to work on. And it looks very sort of cinematic overall. And I quite like it, so that's why I'm going for 21:9. Rather than 16:9. It's just ultra wide, baby. So cool. Perspective. How are we going to set this up? I use this program called Pano Painter. I'm just going to show you it briefly now. Pano Painter is essentially it's 2D drawing, but within a sort of 3D space. And it comes, like this when you open it up, which is very cool. And as you can see, you can look down, you can look up, etc. You can also change the focal length of the camera. So that's really cool. The thing is, drawing in this program is okay. It's okay for sketching, and I do use it for sketching. But I'm so used to Photoshop and how Photoshop feels and looks that ultimately I don't paint in this program or anything like that. But what I do find very useful is the perspective tools in here. So you can have this ground plane that you can move up and down. So this is a ground plane, and you can also, with the guides, pull out guides for perspective. So I can pull them in from the side here, pull them down from the top, and pull them in from the back. And as you can see, if I look around, I can change this. So this is quite helpful, right? Would love this to be in Photoshop. But, go fuck yourself, Adobe, I guess. So what I will do is I sort of set this up in here. Essentially the the sort of perspective that I'm after. You know, I want to be fairly low to the ground, but not on the ground, and ting 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 sahur. First time chatter. Oh yeah, the best program for drawing in space. Unfortunately, it hasn't been supported for a long time. Yes, indeed. I love the name, by the way. It's my favorite Italian brain rot animal. Yeah, it's not been supported. I've spoken to the developer of it briefly. He just said he's like super busy. He's got young children and so on, and the program, yeah, he's unable to like work on it more, which is fair enough. I get it. But maybe one day he'll support it some more. So you never know. But anyway, so what I sort of generally use this for now, aside from like sketching in it a little bit, is that I'll do this, right? And I'll just take a screenshot. Of this. And then I'll bring it into Photoshop. And I just use this as my sort of general guide for laying out an image. And that might seem a bit clunky to you. As like, oh, yeah, why are you doing that? Listen, I find it helpful. I know it's a little bit clunky, but Photoshop doesn't have this in it, and Pano Painter isn't very nice to paint in, so we make do. Okay, sorry. Let me just quickly put you on camera while I save this, in case I open up work that you can't see accidentally. Shipwreak Cove. Yeah, I mean, Photoshop has grids, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work like this. This takes like 2 minutes to set up, and Photoshop's pain in the ass. So anyway, that being said, that is kind of set up in here. So yeah, now I can sort of sketch into this and build up some shapes. And this kind of guide will sit roughly in the background and just make sure that I'm not doing anything stupid. Well, can't promise it's not going to be stupid, but less stupid. And we'll bring up these kind of ship shape things as ref. So the idea here is I want to have sort of my main sort of ship shape is going to be sort of something like this here, sitting in the foreground, like leading us basically into the image. You know, that's going to sit in here, something like this. Nice kind of scoop in. Then, you know, the beach itself, a slightly tilted horizon, is going to be all around here. So there's going to be like rock pools and rocks and stuff in here, all sort of in this kind of vein. I do want to have like, you know, sort of banks of of rocks at different heights, different levels, you know, kind of beach rocks like this with puddles, you know, these kind of banks of rock back here, and to sort of build up layers of that going backwards. You know, maybe on some of these we have a little bit of an indication of like other shipwrecks, you know, bits of mast, that kind of stuff. You know, maybe there's like still ropes and lots of rigging around, which would be nice ways of like leading the eye around and giving us like curves and shapes. You know, maybe there's like a couple of masts here that have all that kind of stuff, and they're a bit more in the background, and just sort of build up layers of that back here. Maybe even there's like waves that are sort of crashing up between the rocks at various points. You know, stuff like this. I do want to have this sort of like negative space under here that I see on this reference. This negative space, imagine the corner of the frames like this. Because then we can see like a little bit further along, like smaller rocks, waves, that kind of thing. Just nice to sort of see through it. It doesn't completely block the corner, but sort of vignettes a small area. So this will be sort of something like this in here. Bit more sort of skeletal in a way. Give the impression of a much larger boat. So that'll kind of all be like this. And then, if you like, in the far background, there's going to be, you know, waves crashing up, more rock formations, so on. Maybe even some just, you know, much larger kind of rock formations in here. But I want it to sort of, maybe not there, because on this sort of third here, yeah, about here, I want to have a sort of a focal point where we're going to have like a much larger kind of rock formation that's going to be behind sort of like a bank of mist and clouds and stuff. And on that we'll have the remains of a much bigger boat, much bigger kind of galleon style boat. But we'll barely recognize it as a boat. It's going to be very sort of skeletal looking. Yeah, a bit smaller like this. Very skeletal looking, and you know, it's broken masts and stuff. And I want to maybe even have like some of the sails that are kind of still brokenly attached to the masts, like catching the wind still. So it sort of feels a bit sort of ghostly, but in a way it's sort of reminiscent of like a castle on a hill. That kind of look to it overall. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of sort of scale at play in this image, so we really need to make sense of like where things are in space in relation to each other. Let's flatten this down. And then, yeah, it's kind of helpful, obviously, to sketch this sort of stuff out before going into making all the shapes for it. Hey, yo. Josh, thanks for the sub. Much appreciated, my guy. Hope you are feeling better today. And thanks for the sub, mate. I really appreciate it. Cheers for tuning in. So yeah. And then obviously back here, we might even have like even larger further back, you know, like just mountain and so on. Some really nice like dynamic sort of storm cloud shapes that help frame the background a bit more. And then yeah, just at various points, just more beach stuff, more rocks, more shipwrecky bits, rock pools, that kind of thing. So there you go. I know that's a really like rough sketch, but it's pretty much what I had in my sketchbook. What I had in mind for this when I was thinking about it. So we're just going to try to sort of build that up. In shape, like we did with the Misty Forest. So yeah, the first port of call really is going to be creating some interesting silhouettes and shapes and kind of building up the image in layers like that. He dodges paint like it's a dance, slides in mud without a chance, covered head to toe in blue, still somehow hot, don't ask me how it's true. He shoots, he laughs, he steals my heart, paintball champ even before the match starts. Josh, it's beautiful. I'm gonna write it in cursive and print it off and frame it on my wall. I'm glad you're feeling better. Okay. Let's oh baby. Yeah, man. Are you still gonna come to trials? Be good to see you. I'm just putting my horizon in here on a separate as a separate line, just so that we don't lose it. It's quite easy to lose it. It's slightly tilted because cinema, baby. And let's get these refs out. So this main ship in the front is kind of, you know, it's at the front. It's going to be a bit more sort of detailed, and it is our real sort of lean into the image. Like we read from left to right, and this ship, like this, is going to be a big sort of sweeping curve that draws our eye into the image from the right, and it's going to point at our focal point, which is going to be the eventual, you know, imagine this is a video game level. This is like where we're going to go. This is where the boss is, up here. So these leading lines are sort of capturing the viewer's eye as it sort of enters the image and sort of pushes it in here. And then we're going to have some other supporting shapes like waves crashing up and so on that sort of do this and kind of bring us into this point. This part of the image, you know, is where we're going to have a lot of shape contrast, like basically sort of empty versus detailed. It's going to have value contrast. The sky's going to be brighter, the rocks are going to be dark, and so on. And this is where we'll have a bit more saturation as well. You know, maybe the sky is going to have like a slight break in the weather, and you're going to get a bit of saturation around this. But it's also going to have like the light on the rocks and maybe a seaweed and that kind of thing that's going to give it a bit of life, a bit of color. And yeah, we're gonna have like rock pools on this ground, right? With water in them, and that's also going to reflect that in it. So this is going to be a sort of a real focal point to the image. And that being said, this boat is like the only sort of shipwreck that we're really clearly going to see, because anything else like back here or bits over here are going to be much more silhouetted and basically a just there for sort of the mood. And this one obviously is going to be, you know, a silhouette entirely. So this is our, what I call a hero asset, or like a hero prop in the scene. It's going to be the thing that we see in the most detail that's representative of analogous things in the scene. And it's kind of helpful to do this in an image so that you essentially you tell the viewer like, right, this is the ship, this is a shipwreck, okay? And then whenever you see shapes that are similar to this in the composition, so these kind of like rib shapes and whatnot, this is what it is. So it helps the viewer understand like, oh, up here is another wreck like this, because I see similar shapes. And it's good to do that. You might notice, you know, we were talking about Warhammer illustrations the other day. In the Warhammer illustration, you have, you know, your sort of main dude a lot of the time. And then you'll have sort of silhouettes and stuff of other guys, similar guys in the battle. And like this guy is the main dude and he's very well lit and so on. But you recognize that all of these guys are, you know, let's say other Space Marines, because you recognize the silhouette and stuff. And these guys won't be as detailed, but there's enough information there that you're like, oh, they're like this guy, and your brain does a lot of filling of information there. So that's what I mean by like a sort of the hero asset. Show it once, show it clearly, then you can repeat it elsewhere, but be more ambiguous and less detailed with it, and people will understand like what it is. Yeah, I'll be there, coming with a friend from ECPL. I've told everyone that I'll be playing ECPL for only 2 rounds, playing Div 3, baby. Nice one. Training on Sunday with my CPPS team, however, for the helps in it. If you're not in Div 2, there's been a huge mistake. I rewatched Div 4 and 5 final overtime point again. Made me very proud. Yeah, no, you did awesome on that last point, man. On a serious note, do you take on private commissions? You can do them on stream. Yeah, I haven't done any private commissions for a little while. I'm not adverse to doing it. I would like take something on, obviously, that I, you know, really felt like I wanted to do. So yeah, I'm not adverse to it. It's just, yeah, given that, yeah, I'm not averse to it. I've just got to really enjoy the thing itself, the subject matter. If it's not something that I'm super into, I'd find it quite hard to have the motivation to do it. Alrighty, let's get into this. Let's make some shapes. So this is something where, for example, I could use custom shapes, right? I could make a custom shape based on these references for the ship and like sort of send me a message and we could talk about it another time. Awesome. I will do, dude. I will do. Yeah, so I could make a custom shape, right? I could trace around this in the pen tool and, you know, have some gaps in it and do that kind of thing. Anyway, back to work. Love you too, Josh. Take care, man. Thanks for tuning in. It's good to talk to you. Gotta speak boat, exactly. cannon fodder on a lore and compositional level. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I could make a custom shape, right? Like we did on the last stream for this. But what I want to do instead is essentially still use the same method where I build like a shape for everything, but I'm actually going to paint all of those shapes. And this way, the shape itself can already have a kind of painterly feel and softness to its edges, and have a bit of texture in there that either the pen tool by itself or a custom shape won't have, because they usually have very sharp and clean edges. And that's fine, and it is a look in and of itself, but I do want this to have a kind of a bit more of a softness and a painterliness to it overall. And if I use like A Tanzana stuff as an example, not this one, but this one, see how these rocks and stuff in the background, they're very much like a painted edge, and it adds to the sort of the mood of the picture. It's got a very like arty painterly feel about it, right? And that's just kind of what I want to achieve a bit more in my landscapes. And I could paint out the sort of hardness of those edges, but yeah, I just want to do it this way this time. So there. So on top of my sketch here, I'm just going to start like building out the main shapes for the composition, painting them out, and then we'll just go from there, really. So yeah, I was just talking before about paintball. Obviously, I play tournament paintball, and our season starts like again in a couple of weekends' time. So we'll be going to trials, essentially like trying out for the team. I'm trying out for a higher division team this year. We and Josh, who was in here before, he was the coach for our team, and also then played for our team as well. And yeah, our last tournament of the year we won, so we're kind of real jazzed about that. And yeah, we're going to be playing again in a couple of weekends, trialing out. So that's going to be fun, although it's going to be bloody freezing. And yeah, having to like throw myself on the floor. It's going to be painful. You might be thinking like, what the hell is tournament paintball? Do you dress up like an army guy and run around in the woods? And it's not like that. It looks a lot more like a sport. I won't go like mad into this, but I'll show you a few photos. This there you go. Yeah, this is me. This is he. And there's me diving on the floor. There's me running to go and dive on the floor. But yeah, this is the team I play for, Mayhem Tigers. There's me here. And there's Josh. And yeah, it's like 5v5. I guess like Counter-Strike, kind of, I guess. 5v5. You have to like eliminate the other team. You have these inflatable bunkers that you hide behind, and we have code names for all of them, so we can talk to each other without the other team knowing what's going on. And we play in tournaments. So last year I think we came fifth overall for the year, but we came first in that last tournament, and we came third in the one before, so we did really well at the end of the season. I play this like my position. There we go. My position is called the Snake. It's kind of like an offensive position where you play up the field, and the idea is that your teammates kind of like feed you information about where the other team is, and then you can use that information to sort of get eliminations, get kills, and it does involve a lot of laying on the floor, laying in the mud, kind of stuff. But really, really fun, honestly. Super fun. Good, really good exercise, as you can imagine. Very explosive. A lot of running, a lot of shouting. It's very loud. The paintballs hurt like hell. Get a lot of bruises, but honestly super fun. Like, I've never enjoyed a sport so much. And a team sport too, which is like something I've never really done. Damn, I'm 30, and if I jump on the floor, I stay in hospital for a week. Yeah, man, I'll be 39 in like a month's time. Like, yeah, pretty much a month today. I'll be 39. It does take it out of you diving on the floor. Like, I definitely no spring chicken there, but it's doable. You just got to get into it a bit more and look after yourself, which I'm not ultimately very good at, but I do come home in shambles after training or after a tournament, just like bit of a broken man. Oh, so you're the snake in the grass. Yeah, basically that is the idea with the role. Being a snicky. So there's going to be sort of, a bit of rocks and sand that attach this into the ground a bit more. So the shape on the bottom doesn't necessarily need to be, pardon me, super resolved. But this top part definitely does. And I think what's going to be helpful here is to like add a secondary shape that describes a little bit of the top deck that can be worked into separately on here. So I'm going to put that in on top, and I'll do that at a slightly different value so that it's viewable. Yeah, as you can see here, I'm just I'm building out flats, but they're just not really super clean edged. And the reason here is to have a bit more of a sort of a painterly finish overall, and have to not sort of go into the image at the end and sort of paint out all of the harder edges, but instead they're already there from the flat shapes in the beginning. And it's easier to do this when you have somewhat of an idea of where you're going with the image, hence the ref, and sketching in the sketchbook first, and then going in and sort of redrawing it out in this, and so on. So I'm going to mask this shape as well, so that I can, pardon me, use the same brush to cut shapes out of it. So I like on this ref that the sort of the deck has like fallen in, and we still have some of the structure going across, and we get the kind of ribbing that you see. I quite like that, because this one is cool, and it does have that, a little bit of that here, but not so much, and that's why I kind of want to combine bits of these two refs. At a certain point, I would have just taken this and used that shape directly, like selected that shape, filled it, and then just done my own things to it. But I want to sort of design something a little more, and just have the whole illustration be a bit more custom in that way. It's good to have references, obviously, and sometimes you just find the perfect one and you're like, oh, I'm going to use that shape directly. But yeah, we're just going to do it a little bit differently, a bit more custom. I've been playing a lot of Path of Exile, which, obviously I talked about it last time on the stream a little bit. But the game has some really fantastic locations and like level designs that I've found just really inspiring. And there was one level that I played yesterday or the day before, was like it's an abandoned prison that has kind of semi fallen apart and is now like flooded, and the waves are like coming through the Nicomator, thank you for the follow. The waves like come through the side of the prison as you're wandering around, and it's all in the dark, and it's like overgrown with barnacles and all that kind of stuff. And it's just really sick. Like, it's just such a cool idea and such a sort of moody level. And I was really into it. And there's also like a really good sort of Shipwreck island as well, which has inspired this. So it's like somewhere between those two things is where I was like, oh yeah, I really want to do a kind of Shipwreck sort of image that's really sort of moody and dark and so on. So here we are. So in environments, I found that scale and managing scale is really important for the overall feel of the image and how everything sort of comes together. And it's quite easy to kind of ruin the scale a little bit by having shapes that are similar in size and shape and thickness. And it's something that you really have to pay attention to, I think, in landscapes to get the scale to feel correct. And this even comes down to how and where you use texture brushes as well. If you use texture brush in the foreground and then you use it in the background, but you don't change the scale enough, the perception of the scale of the entire image kind of changes. and you can really kind of mess your image up in a way that can be quite hard to notice in the beginning, but then you get a bit further into the image and you're like, oh, it just doesn't read. It doesn't read right. So just being aware of that, I think, is half the battle. But then part of that also is just be aware of the scale of stuff and make sure that you are going, from thick to thin, and you're using your texture brushes in an appropriate way that doesn't mess with the scale so much, or even like changing texture brushes as you go back. I kind of use a rule essentially of like, use less texture the further back you go, and you will run into this problem a little less. And just make sure that you scale things appropriately as you go further back as well. It's very easy to do it in a way that really betrays the size of everything. And then your image just sort of feels like the depth won't work properly is one thing. And it will just get this uncanny feeling about it where it's like, it doesn't feel like things don't feel large enough, or like something just ends up feeling a bit like a toy and not, this sort of grand scale of a thing that you're expecting. Yeah, so just be aware of it. Don't be a scale chump. Banana Box 33, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. I like the name. Okay, and then what I'm going to have on this side, and I'll do these slightly darker just so that we can identify them, is like ribs of the boat that are on this side. Let's do that a little bit darker. I won't keep them this dark, but it's just so that we can identify them here. Ribs that are coming out on this side of the boat. Again, so it just feels like a bit more of a complete shape. I'm not going to have too many because I don't want to break up the line, the visual sort of lead-in line, but you're so good. That is very kind of you to say, Banana Box. You're great too. Yo, Zero, what's up? How are you doing? Good morning. And these bits, these ribs that are coming up here, I will make them kind of the same color as the rest of the boat. Really, this is just so that we can visually identify them right now. But it's good to have this kind of overlap. It just makes things feel a little bit more real, a bit more considered overall. I do this with lighting quite a bit, which is maybe something that we'll get to a bit later in this image. We might get to a point where I can put some lighting in and we can talk about this a bit more, but basically it can be a good idea to sort of cut lighting off with cast shadows and so on, instead of letting the shape completely kind of proliferate across a form, is to actually just cut it off in an interesting way, and it really helps to make the figures and stuff feel a bit more grounded overall. It can really place things a bit better and give a good sense of scale and so on. So So yeah, I quite like this shape. We might play with it a bit more. A bit more in there, but I think as like as a flat shape in here to help lead the eye into the image, I think it's working pretty nicely right now. At least it's matched up with the idea in my mind. Good. And you? Yes, I am okay, thank you. I'm okay. Fixie, haven't caught you in a long time. Hope you've been good. Sketch already looking nice. Tasty light shadow shapes. Hey, thanks, Fixie. Much appreciated. And welcome back after so many years, I guess. Thanks for tuning in. How was your holidays? Yeah, great, thank you. Had some good time off. Lots of video games, lots of food. Hanging out with family and stuff. It was very nice. Thanks for asking. What's going on the right side, boss? Okay, so yeah, I talked about this earlier, but not everyone was here. So this is kind of like a big shipwreck that sort of leads us into the image, and you know there's going to be rocks and beach and stuff here. This portion here, our sort of main focal point, is going to be like a big rock structure that has kind of a shipwreck on the top of it with its masts and sails kind of broken and blowing in the wind up here, giving us the impression of like castle on a hill, but instead it's like the big galleon up there. So it's sort of like if this was a video game, this is where we're sort of heading up here, and this is where the sort of the boss would be, if you like. And yeah, this is just like a sort of a loading screen image, let's say. What games? Some Doom Dark Ages, perhaps. Just went through level 2 days ago, full of shipwrecks. No, I haven't played Doom Dark Ages yet. That is, pardon me, something I want to play. I have been playing Path of Exile 2, and I'm really loving it. And yeah, there's sort of a shipwreck island there. There's also like a flooded prison, which is really cool, which is kind of inspiring this to some degree. So yeah, that's kind of the ethos there a little bit. Yeah, great game though. Really enjoying it. I recommend it. If you're into like ARPGs at all, then definitely worth playing. Is this drawing for fun or just for work? This is just for fun. Yeah, I'm basically I've got a bit of time off, and I'm using that to sort of study some of the things that I just want to improve on with my work. And one of those things is landscapes, environments, because I don't get to paint a lot of them. I do get to paint environments in my character work, but I never sort of get to just sort of sit down and paint an environment from scratch, you know. And it's just something I want to get better at and do a bit more of, and I just really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm just using the opportunity on stream here to just do some things that I want to do, that I enjoy. So there we go. Yeah, so like on stream previously, the last few times that I've streamed in the past couple of weeks, I've been doing like environment studies and so on. But usually all of that is like basically copying a reference as a stylization. I can show you briefly. Let me just open it one sec. I'll show you the last one we did like last week. But this, I wanted to just make something up based on an idea that I had that I wanted to do. And so we're making one from scratch today. But like this one we did last week. Well, on 2 streams last week. So I'm using the same kind of process that I used for these to make this one. So yeah. Doing environment is so nice, but so hard in my opinion. Yeah, they are difficult. Part of this is me trying to make my character and environment processes the same. So I'm basically doing this exactly the same way that I would set up a character piece, and just, you know, almost telling myself like, hey, there is no difference between them. It's just a mindset thing. It's just like getting your mind to understand that actually the way that you paint landscapes and the way that you paint environments is the same, and there are slightly different emphasis on things you need to consider, but really the two things can be very analogous, and so we're just making that stick. Did you finish the Skull Targle Splash thing? No, not yet. Not yet. I haven't worked on it for a little bit. I will obviously go back to that and finish it. But like I said, if something piques my interest and I'm like, I just want to do that today, I'm just going to do that, seeing as I'm not like beholden to anything. But yeah, I will go back to it for sure. Like, I do want to paint it. I've enjoyed the image quite a bit up until this point. But sometimes you just got to get an idea out. Vibes-based task management. Yeah, basically. But like I said, it's my time off and it's my stream. And like, if I fancy doing something different on a different day, I'm just going to do it. I don't. So it doesn't. I really have to do anything, you know what I mean? Which is the best thing about it. So yeah. Is the perspective grid a drawn layer in 3D? It is actually drawn out in the Pano Painter in this program. And then I just screenshot it across because Photoshop is ass. But yeah, like I said, the beginning of this stream where I go through the image, like the plan for it, how we got to this point, etc. The VOD for that will be on the YouTube, which is in the links on this page. And so the VOD for this stream will be up there at the very end. As soon as the stream's ended, it will be uploaded on YouTube. And we are actually live on YouTube now as well, but I just don't have the YouTube chat open, so if anyone's actually talking on YouTube, I can't see it. But yeah, you can check out the beginning of the stream and Pano Painter and me going through all the references and all that kind of stuff on there. I think find it helpful. I come from YouTube. Ah, nice. I see. Yeah. So basically, I'm streaming on YouTube so that I can save the VODs there because, you know, Twitch deletes them after a certain number of days. But I haven't sort of geared the stream towards like the audience being there, because I already have, you know, a couple of thousand followers here on Twitch, so I didn't want to like start from scratch and just have to rebuild the audience. So I'm focusing on Twitch for the streams, and like YouTube is basically there to hold the VODs. Yeah, it's enough kind of to talk to one audience, but if I had like a separate audience that not everyone can see on YouTube as well, and like trying to interact with them, I just don't think I'd get any painting done. Yeah, that was randomly recommended to me on YouTube. I figured you might be on Twitch as well. Nice. Yeah, I should maybe have a little something on the screen here that says like live on Twitch. But it's cool that it got recommended to you on YouTube. That is interesting. Yeah, I should figure that stuff out a little bit more. But thanks for hopping over. That's very cool. Very cool of you. So this is kind of like the ship, the sort of main wreck in the background, that we're going to sort of head towards if this was a video game. And I still want kind of the sails and stuff to be like attached to the masts to some degree. Like it should still feel very like broken up, and so on. But I do like this idea that like the sails to some degree are like still attached and like broken and like flapping in the wind still, and it just gives this like a bit more of a, like an ominous feeling about it. But there's some movement there that really helps, you know, sell the weather. I really like in a piece that you can tell like if the wind's blowing and stuff like that. Just, you know, it's very simple, like, you know, flags in the wind and stuff like that. But I think it's just really effective for the mood if you can like feel the weather. So you look at the image and you're like, oh damn, yeah, this feels like really horrible and cold and overcast and so on. You know, and these sails would just be blowing out, and like the rigging, you know, we get a sense of like all the ropes and stuff like that are all tangled, and all the wood's like broken and rotting and that kind of a thing. Just gives us a real sense of history and place and stuff. You probably say that a lot, but any advice for aspiring artists these days? Even AI freaks everyone over with the automatic and all that. With the automatic, yeah, yeah. It's a good question. I think AI is definitely on everyone's minds. You know, it is on mine quite a bit as well. And yeah, we haven't really seen yet to what extent AI is going to be part of, like, I'll just keep it to game illustration for now, because that's my kind of area. But we haven't really seen to what extent it is going to exist as part of the workflow, and how much of the workflow is going to be replaced by AI. I think there's a lot of speculation still as to how that's going to work, and people are testing, lots of stuff out, so that we don't know the extent to which it's going to happen. And all I know is that obviously it is here and it is going to happen. As to the extent of that, we don't know yet. And obviously some companies also might even still choose to not use it. Some might choose to use it loads, and replace loads of workers and so on. We just don't know. I think that personally, AI as a tool in a process like game development will have its uses, and I can see it being quite useful to a certain extent. And I think, at least for like someone like myself, who has worked in games for sort of coming up 12 years now, if and that means that I'm very highly skilled in this area. I don't know to what extent I'm going to have to use AI for future projects and so on. And I just have to sort of think that I'm not highly skilled in another area. I don't have another skill that I'm good at to the extent that I could make a living from, right? And so I have to sort of weigh up initially what my options are, right? And so if my job becomes just me being a one-man team and I have to paint over AI and fix it, I think I will have to do that for a while, just to be able to afford to live. So I'm not sort of the moral outrage about AI and it replacing jobs is not really something that I can actually consider. I'm not going to just point blank not work with it and be out of work and unable to afford my life and my family and stuff like that. So I will have to work with it to some degree, whether I like it or not. And if it comes to a point where I really can't do it morally or whatever, then I guess I'll have to try and find something else. But I feel like it might just be the thing where I have to put up with AI to be able to live, and just make artwork and do stuff for myself on the side, and streaming and stuff like this, where I can make the artwork that I want to make and not use AI and so on, and that be my sort of artistic outlet. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. I know it doesn't directly answer your question, but then going to aspiring artists now, I think that you need to think right now, if you're aspiring to be an artist in the industry, do you want to work in the industry? And if you do, then I think you might have to come to the realization that you are going to need to understand AI to a certain degree, and probably even use AI in your workflow, because I think it is going to be something that's more prevalent and asked for of artists coming into the industry. And it's fine if you don't want to do that, but then I would probably say to you that if you're still learning, that you should maybe look at other options for yourself that don't include basically, if you don't want to work with AI, then and you're at early stage in in your artistic development, then yeah, it's probably the best time to maybe look at other things and just keep artwork as something you do more as a hobby, or you do completely on your own as just like an independent illustrator and so on. Because I think industry-wise, it's here already. It's not going away, and I think it will be something that we are working with more and more, and companies are going to want to use more and more. So if that doesn't sound like something you want to do, then obviously now's the time to think about something else. And like I said, if you're like me, the moral side of it almost doesn't come into it, because like I said, I'm not skilled in anything else, right? I do not have the skills that would enable me to live and get paid the same that I do for illustration. So if I want to keep my life and the things that I need to pay for and family and so on afloat, then I need to work with AI, and accept that is going to be part of my work from now on. And that also means that the moral side of it doesn't really come into it. Like I'm not going to put myself in a financial position where I can't pay a mortgage and I can't put food on the table because I am like not going to work with AI because of the moral implication of it, right? I can't do that. I'm not in that position to do that. I'm not going to do that. So I have accepted in myself that I will probably have to work with it to some degree, and I just don't know what that degree is at the moment, because I think most people don't know, like, how useful is AI? How useful is AI to games development is still on the table. How much will consumers care or not care about its use in games will also dictate how it's going to be used and if it's going to be used. And all those questions are very much like up in the air right now. So it's a big what if, and everyone's just waiting for that to change to some degree. So yeah, weird times, stressful times. At least we are together in this and can relate to each other. Yeah, exactly. And I think like that is a really good point, that we are all in this together and support each other, and therefore like I wouldn't be getting on anyone's case for learning to use AI and figuring out like what works and so on. It's something I've messed around with quite a bit, the possibilities of AI, like what it offers for me in a workflow and so on, because I want to know that stuff. If I have to use it, I want to be able to use it well. Because it's gonna be, my job's gonna depend on it, most likely. So yeah, I would much rather go into it and be like, okay, at least I know how to use it, and what are the best kind of processes, than not do that for a couple of years because I'm like, AI bad, and then just be completely behind the curve, and like everyone that knows how to use it is much better than me already, and that just even further limits my options. So I think it's smart for me to know what to use and how to go about it and what it's capable of and how that would fit into a workflow that makes sense. And for right now, that kind of workflow is it's similar to how like 3D and photos really help in an illustration workflow. It's but it's just kind of a bit more direct. Like, at least with AI, it's almost like you can get a much more direct reference for stuff, which is quite helpful. Let's say I could spend ages searching for the right reference, right, on Pinterest for, I don't know, let's say like a sports car at sunset, for a lighting reference, right? With AI, I could just generate something really quickly as a reference, and it'd be pretty decent as a reference, and that saved me a lot of time in my workflow. And yeah, generating 3D models to pose and ref and stuff like that, pose references as well, just for characters and stuff. Like, there's some good use cases for using it as like a ref generator. And yeah, I just don't know to what extent like the work will all go that way, or if you'd just be painting over prompted images and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not happy about it, don't get me wrong, but I'm just being realistic about it. Like, I'm not just going to stop making, not going to stop working in the industry because a company's using AI when I have, bills to pay and a life to live. I can put that stuff aside and do a job that I enjoy less, just to keep food on the table. And if it's really egregious for me, then I'll have to find time to skill up and move into something else. But that's not something I'm just going to do straight away, or just like straight up be like, I'm not working with AI, and just not work and go into financial ruin. I'm just not going to do that. So I want to work in games, but life changed that. Yeah, for real. Cal says, Wolf, Alex, good to see you. Hey, mate. Yeah, it's been years, dude. Good to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in. Fixie, it's just a job at the end of the day. People pay people to do things if they ask for something because they perceive they'll get more results from their workers out of the money they pay. They get to decide that. None of this exists without someone investing to pay for all the salaries in the first place. It's not ideal, but getting worked up over something you can't control is pointless. Yeah, I sort of adhere to a similar sentiment. Like, I'm very lucky that this is even an option in a career in the first place. And I'm not saying like, oh, I should be very thankful about AI or anything, but I do have to reflect and be like, I am pretty fucking lucky that I can work in an industry where I get paid to draw and paint every day, and it's something that I really love and enjoy to do. Do need to remember that. And like I said, a few years ago now, when like photo bashing and stuff was like a real technique that was new and was coming in, there was a lot of pushback against that as a technique, and like it really did help to produce illustrations of a certain quality and a certain degree. And like, the techniques that I'm using here right now in this are techniques that I used when learning to photo bash, and now I'm just sort of using those same techniques to build an illustration that I'm actually painting. So it is something that is very useful to learn, and I think AI will be something like that too, where it is going to be a tool that is used. I don't think there is going to be a world where it's not used in video game production. I'd be very surprised if we find ourselves a couple of years from now and AI is not used in any capacity whatsoever in game production. And so being realistic about that, I've got to learn it. I've got to understand what it's capable of. And I've also got to be prepared to use it. And that's fine if other people don't want to do that. I'm talking for myself and for my own like survivability in the industry, that I'm going to have to do that. And like, yes, there is the moral implication of work being scraped and all of that, and I totally understand that, and I'm not in any way saying that is a good thing or that it should have been done or anything like that. I feel like it is very immoral and kind of ridiculous how this has all come about, but it is here now, and I need to just face the facts that, morals aside, I'm gonna have to figure out how to live and work in a world where it exists as part of a pipeline and part of the games industry. So I can't just go around and be like, AI bad, and just hate people for using it. Like, I'm going to be one of those people that has to use it. So I'm not going to shout from the rooftops about its praises. I'm not going to praise it or anything and be like, well, it's just so fucking amazing and blah blah blah. No, I still have the same like moral qualms about it that the people that are really mad about it have. But I'm also just being realistic about my position in life, what I need to afford, and the life that I want to lead going forward. And you know, those I'm fortunate to say, those kind of moral ambiguities about AI and its how it's come about and what it uses, I can't really engage with that stuff and still live a life. So unfortunately, I have to move on regardless of that. And yeah, I mean, obviously think of that what you will. Think of that what you will. I can't change your opinion on that. I don't want to change your opinion on that, but that's just where I'm at, you know, with it. It's a shame it's had to be like this, but it is what it is, right? We're here. It's already here. It happened. It already happened. It's just to what extent now it stays and is. Pretty shitty there. Is this a personal piece? It is indeed. Yeah, making. I really wanted to make like a sort of a shipwreck kind of cove sort of illustration yesterday, so I was like, you know what? On stream, we're gonna do that. So I'm currently just building out all of the flat shapes that make up the composition. And then what we'll do is like basically use these shapes to sort of paint inside of, and that will then contain all of the lighting, and so on. Perspective is great, feels very epic. Thanks. Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. got to be very, very cinematic, you know. So I'm just putting some like rock shapes in here, but I'm gonna probably like mess around with these shapes quite a bit when everything's in. But one thing I'm using them to do right now is to essentially point into the image. You know, I'm trying to, let's do this in red, and this should be fairly obvious on here if I've done it right, but I'm trying to use the everything the in the image to lead to our focal point, which is the big sort of, come on, the big wreck back here. So, you know, these lines, you know, even the clouds and so on, they're all coming in to push the eye this way. So these kind of rock and seaweed and rock pools and stuff are going to sort of point into here as well. And to a certain extent, the rocks and stuff on the ground is going to sort of be part of the perspective as well. Valdrill, thanks for the follow. They're going to sort of indicate the perspective of the ground plane that's going to sort of come around, you know, like this. So that, yeah, everything sort of accentuates that. And then obviously, you know, we've got the top vanishing point up here, which doesn't come into play massively because we're just going to have clouds, but at least here we'll see like the underside of clouds quite a bit. And then sort of as they get closer to the horizon, they're going to be like flatter. So we'll get that sort of, you know, underside of the clouds kind of thing going on up above us like that. But then as they get more towards the horizon line, we're going to start seeing like the sides of the clouds, and that's going to help. And there's going to be like a big bank of mist in front of this and so on. It's going to be sick. It's going to be sick. But yeah. And then obviously underpinning that is that perspective grid, which helps everything to feel like it's in the right kind of place. It's very cinematic feeling overall. Sorry. I just got my first case study. Got any tips? Got my first case study. Case study of what? What kind of paint treatment finish do you want to give? More John Park kind of texture brush look or softer digital art look? It's going to be similar to... it's going to be sort of a more... Oh, I opened the wrong file then. Hang on. What have I done? Sorry, give me a sec. It's going to be somewhere between, yeah, that sort of John Park kind of textured look and something a little bit more painterly. So I did this study on stream last time. This was studying, basically using this photo as a reference and then trying to sort of recreate it but in a stylized way here. And this isn't a finished painting, but there are elements of this, like this rock and so on, which you know, in parts of trees that are still quite painterly but have like a, you know, fairly resolved sort of shape, and there's a bit of texture work and so on. So a sort of a more finished version of the style that this was heading in, basically. So still quite shapy. This is Piu, thank you for the follow. So yeah, still quite sort of silhouetted and shapy and moody, but with a little bit less of these insanely hard edges and a bit more sort of painterly edges overall. So hence why we're sort of painting the shapes here rather than lassoing them out, so that they have an inherent wiggle and like painterliness to them already. So that's the sort of the plan. But yeah, at this stage, I'm just putting in shapes that we're going to paint inside of. And talking of shapes, where's my ground shapes? There we go. So yeah, that's essentially where we're at. Wiggle, wiggle. Yeah, exactly. You gotta have the wiggle, man. You gotta have the wiggle. But there's still gonna be, you know, I'm sort of stylizing and simplifying a lot of these rock shapes, you know, quite a bit. I don't want everything to look like really, really realistic. I want it to feel simplified, a bit stylized, and so on. And there'll be like shapes within these shapes as well. Layers and layers of shapes. It's for an internship program at a mobile games company. Not going to be insanely fun, but still experience is experience. I'll be making an obstacle for a match 3 game. Oh, sweet. Nice. Well, good luck with it. Really, my only advice would be, with everything, is just to start general and then get specific later. Don't focus in too early. Just think of like the big ideas, the big shapes, the big picture first, and later focus in on details. You'll notice here that I basically keep like the entire picture in view the whole time. Like I'm not zooming in too much because I want to keep an idea of what the impression of the whole image looks like. And only later on would I then start to like focus in on things. But initially, general to specific, my guy. Always sort the big things first. The values of everything that I have right now in the image as well are not necessarily like the final values. I'm just sort of essentially doing everything in various shades of blue and kind of messing with the value of them a bit more as they get like either closer or further away. But they're not going to be the final values of stuff, and even the final coloring necessarily. It's just a way to sort of visually separate and sort things out at this point. Man, I keep losing these shapes. Where are they? I'll just start a new layer. Doop. Yeah, I mean, like, without seeing what you're working on or anything like that, it's hard to give you like some real, you know, definite advice on how to tackle it. But general to specific is pretty much how I tackle anything that I'm working on. And so it is very useful to work that way. And to be honest, like, it applies to more than just artwork. You know, do the big 20%ers first. Sort the big stuff. So yeah, I might use a bit of a custom shape thing here to get some idea of some sort of rock pools and a slight bit of elevation change in the foreground here. So I'm really quickly going to pop to the bathroom. I'm going to flick the kettle on to make another coffee, and then I will come back and continue with this. So I'll just leave you guys on the Be Right Back screen for a couple of minutes while I just sort all that stuff out. And yeah, I won't be long. I'll be 5 minutes tops. All right. Peace. Yo. I'm back. Sorry about that. Probably lost all the viewers there. But nature calls. So, gonna have to work on these shapes quite a bit, but sort of blocking out generally where most things are gonna be. Oh, come on, you fucking... on the wrong layer. Fucking... fuck. Okay, sorry. Real artists know the importance of coffee refills. Whoever left is just a tourist. Yeah, exactly. I like that. I like that sentiment. Goddamn tourists. It's true though, man. You gotta keep those hot drinks on. Hot drinks need to be on constant restock. It's the only way. It's the only way this can work. Okay, so underneath this, I think the camel, custom shaped camel, is the way to go here. Because he has those like legs. I think these just make really good like puddle shapes. So there's the camel, but I'm gonna use it like very sort of flat and horizontal. Yeah, let's do this up here and build up some like rock pool kind of shapes. No, I drink mine cold. No, it's fair enough. It's still the same diff, isn't it? You have them cold, but we know what we're talking about here. And if you are like, what the hell are you doing with these camels? Check out the video on YouTube from last stream where I go into using these in more depth. What the custom shape tool is, how to use it, and so on, and why it's really great for building up custom shapes, but building up custom like ground planes and like interesting shapes like that. I'm not going to go into it on this stream because we went fully into it last time. But yeah, that stream is on YouTube. Follow the links on the page to the YouTube. You'll find out what we're talking about. But yeah, as you can see, very, very nice start to some like interesting shapes here that I can use later for puddles and such on the ground plane of this image. And it just... I could draw these shapes out, right? I could draw shapes here. That's not a problem. It's just a flat brush, right? But the problem is, and you'll know this in your own experience, that you know, the way you draw and the shapes that you draw and the shapes that you're sort of drawn to and so on are a lot of the time you're going to draw the similar shapes over and over and over again. It's just what we do. It's just kind of habit, right? And so if I draw out every single shape in an illustration, things will tend to like have the same sort of width and thickness and length and brush stroke and so on. And over an entire illustration, that actually just becomes like really repetitious, and it builds up a sort of shape pattern that is really obvious in the illustration. And so what I will tend to do is either draw out some shapes myself like this, and then use the warp tool and warp those shapes a little bit, or I'll use something like the custom shape tool and drag them out and like warp that to get a ground plane. And in that way, what I'm doing is I'm getting shapes that I myself wouldn't naturally trend towards in the way that I use the pen and so on. Because if you're like me, you're probably better at drawing strokes like in one direction. So what I will tend to do is I'll like flip the image and like draw those strokes in that direction, right? Or I'll rotate the canvas and do that. But the problem is they all become the same, like that. And if I'm not being conscious of like changing my brush size and stuff like that, over the course of an entire illustration, those things will match up everywhere, and it looks a bit weird after a while. And it can really mess again with the scale of things. And custom shapes will really help with undoing that, and also taking something you've already drawn. Right, I'm gonna make that red because I just could never find this layer. So if I take these shapes here, okay, and let's just put them somewhere else for now. I can use them elsewhere in the illustration, but if I warp them into place, now what I've done is like changed the natural inclination that I have to draw things in a certain direction and of a certain shape. And it makes it therefore a lot more there's a lot more variety, and the shape becomes then like customary, unique rather, sorry. And it's just getting around that. And I would say in character work, it's not necessarily as obvious or as egregious, right? It doesn't tend to sort of play into it as much. It does appear, but just not in the same way. But environments, I find it is very easy to just essentially replicate the same shapes over and over and over and over again without you even realizing it. And it just becomes very obvious after a while. So draw shapes, flip them, warp them, use the same part but then like rub it out like I'm doing here, and just sort of customarily change it, and so on, and you'll get more variation overall, and it will just get away from everything looking the same. And you might not even realize you're doing it, but a lot of the time when I'm critiquing work, it's something I spot quite a bit. It's like, oh yeah, look, you're using the same brush width in the foreground as you are in the background, and the same texture brush, and you're always doing the same stroke that looks like it's coming from like top left to bottom right. I can sort of tell the way that your arm is moving as you do it, and yeah, it looks really, really strange. It's just we're just comfortable. Like, you're right-handed or you're left-handed, it's easier for you to draw strokes in a certain direction from a certain point. Yeah, you can just get Get real samey out here. So don't be a samey stan, you know. Be unique. Sorry, I was just color coding my horizon so I don't lose it. Okay, I'm gonna make a shape here that's gonna sort of be water. I'll just draw it in orange quickly, but like I'm gonna have some waves like splashing up here, and then like water flowing into these rock pools around here, as if like a wave is, or like, you know, water is sort of coming in. The idea being it's sort of gonna encircle the image like this around, and then it's going to splash up on the back of these rocks here, and it's going to be crashing up on this here, and then we're going to get a little bit of like splashing up there and so on, you know, maybe even some of it comes forward here. It's just going to be at various different depths in the image, so that we can tell here from like the splash size, like, oh, these rocks are closer, and then this back here is going to be like much tinier particles, just big shape of rock and water splashing on this. So we're like, oh, this is massive, and like we can tell that this is a certain distance away, and like if we have a little bit of splashing here, that it's going to be bigger, and so on. Scale, very important. Notice like back here that the rigging on this is really quite thin. I could actually make this a lot thinner, which I will do. I'll go and erase that. And like the ribbing here, you know, there's going to be some rigging and stuff on this where we show ropes, and then yeah, the relative sizes of things are going to change. Wondering like to what extent. I'm just roughly trying something. If this like yeah, I think I'll have some like rigging that like comes out and across, and you know, all these kind of ropes. But what I was thinking is like maybe we have like a sort of snapped kind of part of the mast that is in here, but it needs to sort of still go in this way. I don't want it to be massive, like it sticks out something like this, but enables us to have a bit of like rigging and stuff that hangs off of it, that has really nice like negative space against the sky. So that's something we can play around with. I don't want it to necessarily stick out like this, and maybe it doesn't even need to be here. It could actually be like rigging and stuff over here. It's just the ropes are really good because the ropes can basically introduce curves into the image that can help frame and push the eye around, and sort of vignette things a little bit more. But yeah, I'm sorry, just roughly squiggling that in there because I'm like, oh, I'll do that later. But we'll do the water now. And obviously the clouds, they're going to come in like however they're going to be, and that's really going to be pangers, mate. Okay, right. Oh my god, I'm terrible with the layers today. My brain is fried, my guy. Too many video games in the last few days. Fried my mind. Okay, so I'll do these waves quite a bit lighter for now, just so that they're separated out. Yeah, sweet. Sweet dude. Yeah, and the reason I'm sort of separating everything out like this and giving them their own sort of layer with a flat shape on it is then later what I'll do is like paint inside of these shapes all of the textures and lighting and everything, and that way it's still very modular. Like if I wanted to move this boat later on, I can actually just warp the boat and it's not baked into the image. You know? Yeah, when I was on a break for a good 2 weeks just playing games, first day back was very sluggish, but I assumed everyone else was the same, so I don't mind. Yeah, I mean, if I don't draw for a few days and I come back and draw, like, it takes a little bit of time to get back into it, get my hands working, like, you know. It's like with anything, like, if you don't go to the gym for a while and you go in and you just, like, can't stand. So I'm going to use some of the shapes that I already have here to like mask back out the water. So I'm drawing over rocks and shapes right now, but what I will do is then use those shapes and sort of cut the water back out. Or I could actually stick the water under everything. That'd probably work. And then I can do splashes over the top. Yeah, that's better. Correction! Whenever I paint sort of like a scene that has weather in it, and then start to sort of feel that a tiny bit as I'm painting it, you know. If you're painting something cold and then you just start getting cold, sort of like that. I'm just color coding the water layers blue so that I can find them. This is the perfect example of like, oh, shapes of being very similar to each other, similar sizes, similar scale and stuff. So gotta erase back into these things a little bit, warp them slightly, just take out your it's like a sort of custom fingerprint in your style, you know? You're just gonna do similar things everywhere. Boom. I'm starting to enjoy where this one's going now. There's always that kind of bit where you're first building stuff up where you're just like, I don't know, boss. You got to get through the uncanny beginning part of any illustration where you're just a bit like, don't know if this is it, Chief. Okay, let's look at it upside down for a sec. Press save. Save. Hydrate. Sip lunch. I've got to make sure I finish by 1:45 so I don't miss the meeting I've got to do, but we've still got ages. Okay. So I'm just using this brush that has like a little bit of texture at the edge to give these shapes a bit of texture now that I have the kind of the shape that I'm after, but the edge is still quite sharp. So I'm just sort of softening that off already a little bit with this brush so that when I paint inside of it, it doesn't quite have that sort of digital sharpness to it. And I'll need to do that with those rock pool shapes and so on. as well, but sweet. And now I'm gonna do like the big epic wave that's gonna be lapping up against the side of this big rock in the background. That's kind of our, like I was saying about the hero ship in the front. We gotta jazz up our focal point back here. It's gonna be the hero wave. Blue. Let's make that blue. So part of this is going to be behind the rock. And I'll do like big main general shape first. You know, to get the right sort of curvature and stuff going. And then I'll use a bit of a textured brush to give that little bit of the splash. On that backside too. I've got to make sure that I don't do the splashes like similar size to anything in the foreground, like it, because I've used this same brush over here. So I don't want to do the same size shapes and then it messes with the scale. This is why it's texture brushes can be dangerous. mess with your scales across the image and then it becomes a bit sort of uncanny, a bit strange. Or at least the scale reads wrong. That's probably a better way of saying it. So I'm going to mask this so I can cut back into this shape with this brush a little bit. Get a bit of like negative space carved out in this. Customize that shape a little bit. Still want to keep the sort of curvature of it, but just imply the texture a little bit more. And turn the grid off for this as well, actually, because you see it better at least. Where my grid at here? Run me that grid, bad man. There it is. Okay, we'll make that yellow. So yeah, you can see here, like cutting back into that shape a little bit. Giving it some wave. And turn that kind of basic cloud shape off as well. You see this a bit better. Don't want to like fragment it too much because I still want you to like read it as that sort of curvature, but it does need a bit of texture. And then I'll go back in with like a harder brush, just like a solid brush here, to do some like tiny little Oh yeah, I'll do this one separately. Separate layer. So all my water layers will be color-coded blue. Then if I just need to find them at any point, it's a bit easier. You can control click on a layer. It does work pretty well most of the time. Like if I want to find the layer that this ship's on, if I hold control and click on it, it will jump to that layer. If you saw that there. Right, let's jump to one that's like a bit higher up above everything. What was on this red layer? Yeah, these rocks, right? So I can control click there, and if I want to go back to the wave, I can control click it. It does work pretty well. I think sometimes it gets like a little bit confused when there's like layer modes that are affecting an image. I've had it where it just like completely doesn't know what layer I want, but it's a good when you've got tons of layers and you're like, where is it? Always try control clicking it first. Okay, and then I want like part of the wave that's it's sloshed up on here, but it's also started to wash over the front part. So I'm gonna make that a new layer, blue, and I'll do like the sort of sloshy over part first. You know what I mean though, where water like hits the rock and then like the splash, but then part of it just like washes over the top of the rock. I want to do that. So to give this rock like a little bit of depth, there's going to be a sort of a portion of the water that is like sloshing over the top and like running around the shape of the rock itself. This is going to give it some good scale. And then on top of that, like here, get a bit of a splash going on where it's like splashing up. And a bit like at the very bottom. And we'll still be able to get some depth from like the splashes of the ones in front. We'll do that with color and stuff later. But for now, it's looking all right. Do you want maybe like one bigger bit of splash? Yeah, like lower down coming up behind like that. Hey yo, Rach Gianna, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Welcome. Okay, nice. So here, I'm going to make a grey layer. I always open that menu instead. Right, I'm going to make a grey layer here. And this is going to be where I might have some like separation fog. Well, there's going to be a few layers of this kind of thing, but a few layers of like a separation fog between certain elements. I'll just color code that in grey for now. But almost like part of the bottom of this rock is going to get shrouded in a mist. I'm going to give this like a bit of a stylized shape as well. But you know, there's going to be a lot of like water spray, right, from the waves, and it's going to, you know, making the air very humid. And also this is going to be a bit kind of video gamey, right? So I want a little bit of like mist and kind of humidity to it, but in a stylized manner. So like giving it a bit more of a shape than it would otherwise have in real life. And let's actually just color code this a bit more blue, actually, because the grey, it wouldn't be grey. Let's put it this way. But I just change it so that we don't confuse it with the water for now. So it's like a slightly different blue. Okay, cool. And again, the mist, we also need to be careful with the scale of it. Like back here, it needs to have a much sort of smaller scale in the sort of wafty off parts of it than it will do further forward, and then again we can tell where things are relative to each other front to back in the illustration. Alright, so the biggest thing I've learnt with doing environments is that it is all about managing scale front to back in the image, managing the scale of texture, managing the scale of you know, trees, rock formations, whatever it may be. If you can really pay attention to how big things are in the foreground, how big things are in the middle ground, how big things are in the background, and you can manage those things well, as in like they're not repeating, you'll be really some way to figuring out environments. I think the biggest problem I always had and always see with environments is just scale issues. How big something is meant to be in the foreground versus how big something is meant to be in the background, and those things just not matching up for whatever reason. Maybe it's you've used the same texture brush and not changed the scale. You've used like a photo that has a ton of detail somewhere, but it's really far back, and then you have something in the foreground that's like nowhere near as detailed and dense, and yeah, those kind of things, the biggest issues I see, and biggest issues I've faced with this kind of stuff as well, is scale. So get them right, get your scales right. Okay. And then, yeah, when it came to clouds, not quite sure what I'm going to have. I'm going to start sort of blocking some stuff in and just see where we go. I do have my references I wanted to follow. This is going to be really helpful for all this stuff in the foreground. Bit more elevation, I think, needed. What I quite like about this is that you can tell there's like elevation change, all right? And here, because it's all just flat shapes right now, it all appears a bit flat, but on the edges of these shapes, you know, I can make that elevation change between like there being a sort of a top plane, a side plane, the pool of water itself, etc., etc. So I like that elevation changes here. It's quite nice. But yeah, time of day wise and mood, like I really like this kind of really dark mood that these two pieces have, especially this one. And yeah, I think I would like to like sort of readjust the values on this image so that they're much more close together. And right now the values are kind of quite far apart from each other relatively, because I'm just putting flat shapes in to sort of build up a composition. But once we have those flat shapes in, I can then adjust the values of all of these things and build something up that's a lot more I can adjust the values so that everything's a little bit more closer together, which should really help the mood. God, we do love the mood. And these sails probably need to go brighter, but I need to adjust, the values in the sky would need to reflect that. So there's a lot of stuff that still needs to happen, basically. We're still at the very early stages of this. Okay, yeah, behind this is, I wanted to indicate like a few more. Sorry, before I do the clouds. Oh, okay, Alex jumping around again. Yep, I know. Yeah, what I realized is that I want a few more sort of areas where we can see the silhouette of bits of shipwrecks just a little bit, so that they're not just like rock shapes, but we're actually seeing like, oh, okay, there's lots of wrecked ships around here. It's not just one in the foreground and that one very far in the background. It's like we're seeing lots of areas like this. A bit more storytelling. It's a shipwrecked cove after all. And we'll be able to do a lot with the gradients in this image, which is going to be nice. So let's get some rigging shapes going around. And these shapes don't ultimately need to make sense. I'm not really sort of thinking this is exactly how a boat would wreck. I'm just sort of drawing shapes that I find interesting. clouds are ultimately good for sort of selling scale as well. You just got to remember the perspective, and that, you know, depending on where they are in the sky, we're either going to be seeing like the underside of them more, or as they get close to the horizon, in this case, we're going to be seeing the side of them, and sort of really dramatically changing the scale as we get over towards the horizon, and just making sure that, yeah, that perspective is there. Because it's one of the things that you can really flatten your image out with, is like doing the clouds, and then we're just doing them in a way that ignores the perspective, and then they just feel like a big sort of flat kind of bank at the back that's betrays the size of things and the perspective. So just really got to be mindful of that. So I always try and put in, like, again, general to specific, the larger shapes first and the big general direction that everything's going in, and then try and think of the layering and the sizing overall, and where I'm seeing the clouds from. So I know that, like, ones that are kind of more over this side of the image up here are like on the bottom of the dome, if you like, and then they're going to peel away towards the horizon. So I'm just kind of painting a soft version of the sort of cloud formations in the sky back here, so that I almost have a base for like where the contrast should be in the image. And then over the top I'm going to paint the clouds. Into this, so that we have something underneath them that kind of shows through. Man, everyone must be busy today. All quiet in the chat. Focus mode. That or chat's frozen and I've just not realised for 20 minutes. So we go, like warping again to try and break up the natural inclination to make very similar shapes and decisions. And yeah, I'll like block these clouds in, and then I want to kind of readjust the values of all the flat shapes in the image and get a better impression of what the sort of value grouping overall should be, or feels like it should be, and that should give us a pretty good plan from there forward. And then I won't jump into like rendering stuff too quickly, because there's lots of shapes in here that could do with a bit more part of me designing. And it's sort of the thing where, you know, when I finish stream today, I won't look at the image for a little bit, and then I'll come back to it and I'll sort of see a lot of things that I want to like change and work on a bit more. And you know, there's like rock shapes and some of the boat shapes and all that kind of stuff, and I want to get a bit more boat stuff in there. And at this stage, everything is really easy to change because it's just flat shapes, right? So it's a good time to do any of those kind of edits that I already see where I'm like, oh yeah, that needs to change, etc. etc. Yeah, is my chat frozen? Can you see this? Can you guys see that? can't tell if it's frozen in my my OBS. Well, it's not OBS, it's Meld, but yes, visible chat works for this. Okay, wicked. Nice one. Thank you. Thanks for that. Legend. Okay, so I've blocked in some rough-ish cloud shapes. Then they're going to change from this overall, but there's enough here for me to just see kind of what I'm going for a little bit with them. I do want to be a bit more bold with the design and shape of them, but at least for now, they sort of represent what I'm looking for to a small degree. So really now looking spooky, that ship in the distance doing a little mermaid pose. Yeah, it's like whatever she does on the rock. I can't remember what she says. I can't remember what the lyrics are, Days. Where she's up on the rock, like, and the wave hits it. Yeah, that's what the boat's doing in the background. Part of that world. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what this ship's doing in the background. Anyway, clouds aside. Sorry, values in the image. I was just looking for this. Yeah, for these. Okay, so let's get up this reference. And I'm going to use this to sort of help manage the values in this image somewhat. Actually, let's save it just now. And then I'll make the changes. Oh no, is my coffee cold? Damn it. Bummer. Arcano Draws, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. I hope you are doing well. So I'm just adjusting the values in this illustration right now, just to basically close them all up a little bit. I could do this, you know, as an adjustment layer over the top, but that gets pretty annoying pretty quick when you're trying to paint an illustration if you have a load of adjustments on top of it. While you're trying to paint things, I feel like it's easier to sort of just do that at the end and adjust things. Sort of like a grading pass. Whereas like right now, it's kind of better to do this stuff a bit more individually. I find, at least. And then that means we can just paint inside shapes and it's all kind of quite chill. And then later we can adjust if we need to. And this way also I get a bit more control over what I'm trying to do. Okay, no draws. Wow, this looks so good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I appreciate you saying that. And Asta, hello. Frozen boat, perfect for January weather. Exactly my thoughts. Exactly my thoughts. Yep. Oh, yep. How are you, Esther? Anyway, are you good? I'm really not digging anything I've done with the sky at the moment. Oh yeah, just chilling, getting a lot of New Year's things in order. Yeah, fair. Feel you there. Feel you there. Okay, I got about 40 minutes until I need to leave today. So that being said, I'm just going to quickly pop to the bathroom, and then I'm going to come back in and continue kind of blocking the large color spaces in here and sort of playing with the values and colors and contrasts of stuff with these shapes, and then yeah, that'll probably take us up to the end of today. And then yeah, next stream what I'll do is come in and like adjust some of these shapes, maybe like design some of these shapes a bit more. Shrapnella, thanks for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, design some of these shapes a bit more, and so on. And then, yeah, probably on next stream as well, we'll start to kind of render some of this out a little bit. Work with inside the shapes to build something up that's kind of quite interesting in terms of texture and yeah, a kind of a render. But yeah, really nice start on this so far. Eldarius Z1, thanks for the follow. I'm really enjoying the build up of this image so far. Yeah, really. It's starting to look like what I had in my head a little bit. The clouds in the sky, not quite. But I think I just need to design the shape of them a little bit properly. And actually, I was thinking, hang on. Let me pop to the bathroom and then I'll come back and explain all this. Alright. I'll be right back. I'll leave you on this screen actually. You can at least look at the image a little bit. Alright, be right back. Yeah, okay, so what I was saying with the clouds, if we were in Minecraft the you know, the clouds, if we just thought of them as cubes, the big shapes of them anyway, you know, they'd be like this. And then as we get like down here, they'd be more like this, right? So what I kind of want to do is, and it's just important that we're like looking at the bottom side of them here. Yeah, cube clouds, it's like a 3-body problem. So, you know, these clouds are all like this, right? And I see the bottom of them quite a bit under here because I'm like under it. But then as they get sort of closer to the horizon line, they're going to appear to like flatten out, and we're going to see the front faces of them, these faces, more. And the bottom plane is just going to be really thin underneath. And I just need that to come across with the clouds, really, so that the depth and stuff reads nicely, and the perspective works. And that I also want sort of like another bank of clouds up here. So the lightest part of the sky is going to sort of sit behind the focal point up here. And that's just, yeah, the basic ethos of like what I'm trying to do with the clouds. And maybe doing them as cubes is not a bad way to start, just to to force that into my mind a little bit. But clouds is one of those things that you start painting, you're like, oh, how hard can it be? They're just clouds, right? They're just fluffy shapes, and you just make all the fluffy shapes everywhere. And then you realize it's like really flattening out the image because the shapes aren't representative of like where they are in space. And it starts to become the thing that sort of flattens the image out. So like the ground plane works quite nicely to help push this perspective of the image and show us like where we are in orientation to everything else. But then the clouds don't do that because they're just really flat. I just got to remember to like pay attention to the perspective more when thinking about the clouds, and like think about what faces of the clouds I'm seeing. It's not like, oh, I can't do that or anything. It's just sometimes we just don't think clearly. Especially when I'm on stream, it's kind of sometimes hard to like think, talk, and paint. So I'll do two of those things. I'll talk and paint, but I won't be thinking, and then I make some mistakes. Or I'm like painting and thinking, and then I can't really talk. So it's just a bit of swings and roundabouts. But actually drawing them as cubes first, just now, and now sort of going in and just turning them a bit more into like cloud shapes, that's really helped. I can draw anything but clouds, I just don't get it. Yeah, they are difficult, man. Trust. Like, they seem like they should be easy. They're really easy to get wrong. Really easy to get wrong. But it's just doing some studies. Like, I've done quite a few cloud studies. I'm quite happy with like painting the shapes of clouds. It's just making sure that they stay in perspective relative to the scene. That's where it can go a little bit awry for me. A lot of the time. Just gonna try something out real quick. Yeah, sorry. I'm in like concentration figure out mode. So not talking, but yeah, it's just the clouds in this are going to be pretty important for setting up the mood and the perspective and everything, so need to make sure that they are correct, you know. And at the moment I'm not finding the exact sort of shape that I want. But I also feel like the values of the image overall need kind of adjusting still, so I need to like not jump around and just actually do those things. Feel like the yeah, I just need to cluster the values a lot closer together. So let's just do it. Let's just do it. Okay, yeah, okay. This is part of the issue too. Yeah. Okay, you figured it out. Well done. Well done. Okay. Sorry. So, yeah, the issue that I was having is that it was starting to feel a little bit muddy, right? And I think it's because I had some of the warmer tones in, but still some of the rocks were like bluer colors. And this was really jumping between like hot and cold quite a bit, between like the bluer things and the browner things, if I'm making it real basic. And yeah, this is starting to really sort of make the sky feel really strange and really kind of muddy. And now that I'm just going in here and fixing the temperatures of certain things, it's starting to feel a little bit better already, so that's good. There's always something. Looking dope. Really love the colors. Thanks, my dude. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle. Bit of a struggle. But we're getting there. getting there. And good morning, Dan. Afternoon, rather. Sorry. So I'm in uber concentrate mode right now. That was yeah, a small stretch of intense concentration trying to fix this problem, but now that I've figured it out, it's starting to come together a bit better, just in terms of like the color palette and so on. And yeah, we'll get there. I just need to pull all of the values a bit closer together, was part of it as well. I need to remember that these sails are like quite far back, and I just need to try and keep that silhouette a little bit more closed up. When I say closed up, I mean like just more one value, because there's not really... Part of the mood is going to be it not being very detailed, you know? Pardon me. So it shouldn't start getting detailed. I just need to remember that. Let's put this as an orange layer. Smooth. Lighten. Try and crush all this stuff together a bit more. Yeah, overcast weather like this is it's quite difficult to do. Everything is very subtle. The coloring is very subtle, and if you go a little bit too colorful, a little bit too much of a value jump between areas, and especially with temperatures, if you like flip from warm to cold just too dramatically, it can really make the image feel very like muddy and unresolved really quite quickly. It's very difficult. But now that it all feels a little bit more clustered together, it starts to feel a little bit better. And like later on, what I would do is kind of go in over the top of everything like this. And really kind of crush together the values a little bit more even. I would start to get this real like overcast mood to it, and I would even put like a multiplier. Let's check the time. Okay, I got about 10 minutes before I gotta go. But yeah, I'd like crush the values together like this, and like vignette the image a bit more. You know, let's basically sort of do something a little bit more like this later on. So it's all really like clustered together. But yeah, those are kind of more finishing touches. Right now, I would want to go in and basically start introducing some textures, some form into these shapes. You know, some textures and reflections in the water. I want to introduce a few more like these kind of shipwrecky shapes and that kind of a thing. But I think as the basic kind of block in, like right now, that's even quite nice, even very crushed like that. Yeah, damn. Yeah, once some of these shapes have a bit more sort of texture and form inside of it, it's going to really open up the image as well. But like I said, as a starting point of like, let's just make this grading. As a starting point for finishing up the image from this point, we've got a nice start. It's got the mood that I want. Like the main things are in place, like my focal point being the spooky ship, and yeah, the very subtle hue shifting. Like if I open up the colors, like it subtly sort of shifts into these like desaturated colors, but because you see this is more like gray, but everything around it is blue basically. It starts to make it look like this is like this is slightly even brown, and it's not. It's just grey, right? It's because it's surrounded by lots of blues, and I'll go into why that is next time. Next time, tune in. But it's called simultaneous contrast. But yeah, this stuff up here, it's got nice subtle hues. I put some purples in over here. This is the only bit that actually goes into sort of more sandy colors, but there's going to be some subtle greens in here that I want to get in, some like seaweed. There's going to be barnacles. Yeah, but it's going to be very overcast and moody like this. Not an awful lot of like detail, if you like. Yeah, hopefully you guys think that's cool. I think it's cool. But yeah, we'll have to do a lot of this next time because I better go. I have a meeting that I need to attend. But it was great being back streaming today. So thanks for tuning in. I needed the distraction of being on stream. So yeah, very nice. I will be back tomorrow at the usual time of 11, so not 10 o'clock like today, but 11 UK. I'll be back tomorrow, and I'll continue on with this image. And yeah, thanks you for all of the new follows that we had today. Thank you very much for the new sub that we got today. Thanks to everyone that tuned in. Hopefully you found that useful and helpful. Please check out the YouTube link on the page in the About section. This stream will save there immediately when it's finished. And if you missed the start of the stream where we put together this image and designed the composition and the shapes, you can watch back on YouTube there and you'll be able to see what I did and me talking about the various like little bits of technique and so on that went into that. And yeah, that being said, thanks Voidalfire for the follow there. Have a great day, everyone, and I will catch you tomorrow. All right, peace.